presented by Dano's Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
I really have to get that title thing fixed. I've been telling you I was going to do that forever. It still says me, TJ only. Now we got.
It's the end of the season. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well,
my contract hasn't been renewed. I might have to take my talents to a different podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Just jump on another Sunbelt one and do a Charles Huff there on us. But welcome into the latest edition of the Sunbelt Syndicate. Quickly, thank you to our sponsors, Dubby Energy, Fanplex Graphics. Again, as you can see, for the Troy and App State fans specifically, until they can keep adding more. TSN Off Road for all your off-road, but it doesn't have to be off-road. I don't have an off-road vehicle. I mean, I guess I have a truck, so technically it's off-road. But we have some people that have installed into like Toyota Camrys. So these bungee boards where you can strap stuff to them, don't need an off-road vehicle. And then, as always, Dano's Seasoning with their newest and latest Cajun seasoning, the purple top, as they call it. Marv, we got some questions to get to, but how are you doing tonight, first of all?
I'm good, man. Glad to be here. Sad that conference season's ended, and bowl season, while it's exciting, it's the end of football. But we'll have baseball coming up here very shortly.
Yes, we will. Riley is our first commenter of the night. Georgia Southern fan. You cannot, all caps, let a coach go in the final year of a contract at a Sunbelt school. You need insurance of a buyout and guarantee of future for recruiting. Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I think, though, we were talking a little bit before we went officially live here, but there just maybe some head clashing or some disagreements of how things should be run. And I think they were kind of both sides, from the sounds of it, both sides were kind of okay with having it end amicably, I guess. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not messy. It's just like, hey, we're just not going to do anything.
It's a passive-aggressive breakup. It's like, hey, I'm not going to date you anymore. You're not going to date me. I've already got my next girlfriend. You've already got your next boyfriend. Everyone knows about it, but we're going to go to the prom together, and then we're calling it quits.
That's your second greatest description or example that you've given in many weeks. I told you I gave you credit for your he knows all the lyrics to their favorite song line, because I was like, dude, that's perfect. It's so simple but effective and so meaningful to so many of those people that we're talking about. But yeah, it definitely a strange one. He also says horrible mismanagement of the future by the AD, and we are seeing it with the mass exit of mid-high school recruiting class.
So to Riley's point, we had talked a couple of weeks ago. My understanding is that, like, after the Notre Dame win and after that season, the AD at Marshall tried to give him a contract extension. And we know with an extension, there was going to come a buyout, right? Huff didn't take it. I don't know if it was we'll get into it here in a little while once we get to the game, but some of the issues that we've already talked about. But it sounds like they tried to mitigate some of that risk, and Huff just wasn't playing ball with them.
Interesting. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you think that an agent gets involved and says, I can get you more. And so Huff says, well, I'm just not going to sign anything. But then the longer that goes on, the worse it gets.
Well, that Notre Dame win was what, 2 seasons ago? It wasn't this season. It wasn't last season. There's a lot of time that's passed in between there. And yeah, like Riley said, we know he had his struggles last year, or Marshall did. They offered Huff a contract and he didn't want to stay. Yeah, there you go. We know he had his struggles last year, but man, that's risky. Coming in, like you said, to the last year of a contract with no contract. You can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as, if it doesn't work out, the college gets to get out with no buyout and everything's fine. Or the coach is on a prove yourself contract where you get a better contract at your current school, or you go to Southern Miss. I don't know.
Yeah, very strange. And we will get into that a little bit further here in a little bit. Chad Dickens, for those of you who don't know, but may have seen, I'm sure you have, SB Ref, Sunbelt Ref on Twitter. That was Chad. I guess, I don't know if he started it. I believe he did. Is kind of a burner account where he was unknown. But he has let himself become known because he's giving the account up to someone else to run, obviously unnamed. and they officially take over Monday, but I think I already saw them messing around with it today, and we were having a little bit of fun back and forth. But Chad was a ton of fun. I actually got to meet Chad in person. He is a Southern Miss fan at the game in Boone last season, and just a great guy. We also had him on the show. Marv, as you remember, we had the I don't remember what
Bourbon and baseball. It. Was it bourbon and baseball?
Bourbon and baseball. That's right. You're right. We paired schools with our favorite bourbons, or just bourbons in general. That was so much fun with him.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that again.
Yeah, we definitely will be doing something like that again for baseball. We're definitely going to cover it just as good, if not better, than last year. We do have a plan in place to do it better than last year with all three of us, and more special guests along the way. But before we get into the game here, a couple more comments. G. Will is saying we are playing that game with Ronnie, but different scenario because he hasn't won and is in a prove it year. Yeah. I think we saw enough that it looks like it's transpiring the way that they wanted it to, probably earlier, of course, but there's promise there. There's talent there. The problem is now I've already seen some transfers, put their name out. So
we could have a whole show because I think the portal officially opens tomorrow. We could have a whole show about transfer portal and how these teams are just getting gutted.
Yeah. And we do have to remember, as many guys as put their name into the portal, they could come back now that these coaches have officially been hired at a few of these schools. I don't think it's likely in very many scenarios, but there could be 2 or 3 at a couple schools that even are decent sized names that you don't want to leave. And you say, hey, my buddy said this guy was awesome when he came and introduced himself. And yeah, I guess I'll stick around. Could happen. Again, unlikely for some of those bigger names because they're probably leaving for a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But it's possible. Riley says Helton needs an extension to make sure this doesn't happen to us, or at least we profit off of it. Yeah, I think for Sunbelt schools,
protection, financial protection.
Yes, it's vitally important because our players are continuing to be poached. Our coaches will continue to be poached because we just can't compete the monetary value that the power conferences can. Sucks. Yeah. That's facts. That's life. We know that's how it goes. So we'll have to see. Trevor Everett, man, I got to meet him in person for the first time Wednesday. We covered the Coastal Carolina and Campbell Camels basketball game. Dude, have you ever been to Buies Creek and Campbell's University?
Yeah. Oh, dude, they have a phenomenal university down there.
Yes.
The infrastructure and the facilities they're top notch. A lot of private money there.
Yeah. It's a small school, but it's very, very nice. I was blown away with the basketball complex. Obviously, some of the things are a little bit smaller. Like the media room was pretty small, but very nice. And to hear that the thing's like 20 years old now, I think when I heard it was that old, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. Whoever, gave you the design and setup was doing their job because it's very nice, very good setup. It got the crowd side wasn't great. Okay. But it got very loud in there when they were making a little bit of a comeback. Actually ended up taking the lead over Coastal late. Campbell did. So just phenomenal. He's written an article about the game. So if you've got a chance, I've shared it on Twitter. He's obviously shared it on Twitter. Go check it out. He does a lot of great basketball coverage. So Trevor's a great guy now that I've also finally gotten to meet him. Marshall has already had 4 transfer out, Steven said. Yeah. Officially not transferred out, but telling you that they will put their name in. Yeah.
And listen, I was thinking about this a second ago. Obviously, if you have 3 teams that have new coaches, I would assume the second you're hired, you're reaching out to some of the bigger name kids that have jumped in the portal and been like, hey, man, I'd like to meet you. I don't know what your plans are, but I just want to have a conversation because I'd love to have you here.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Chad is already saying Braxton's already declared for the portal, or saying he's going to, technically. Your thoughts on him joining Huff in Hattiesburg? My sources say 100% he joins Huff. Your thoughts? I don't see why he wouldn't. He just won him a champion. He helped win each other a championship. So why would you not keep that rolling? Plus, what is Huff walking into? One of the worst situations quarterback-wise in this conference, maybe in the country. I mean, they threw more interceptions than touchdowns as a group and individually, I guess, this season. So you would tell Braxton he's immediately the starter. There is no and ifs or buts. You're the guy.
And he's already burned 3 years of eligibility. Like, this is his last year. What? You might as well play it with someone that you're very comfortable with their coaching style and their system. I get it.
Yep. Comfortable coaching style, system, a conference you now know pretty well, a conference you just won as a tandem. I mean, it makes too much sense for him not to go there, you know?
Man, I think the hatred of Marshall and Huff is going to be so deep. Please tell. I know they haven't released the schedules yet, but please tell me that Southern Miss plays in Huntington next year, because I would drive to the game. I would drive to the game.
That would be. We are there. There's definitely a great reason to go see that game if it does in fact happen. Marshall will start their third string quarterback in a bowl game. Well, I mean, you've had some experience. Last year, you guys saw a bunch of quarterbacks. This year, not as many, but you obviously ran that 2 quarterback system to start the year. So maybe not the worst thing. I don't know. We'll get to this. We'll get to some of this. Okay. Rumor is Southern Miss and Brett Favre enticed Huff with the briefcase full of foods. I thought this was a serious comment until I read the whole thing. That's man. Great.
If we had a contest for funniest comment of the night, that's the leader of the clubhouse.
Yeah, that is definitely the comment of the night. I don't care who you are, that's funny, right? Isn't that what the saying is? Yes, I started it. It started the day Southern Miss joined the Sun Belt. Yeah. Oh, man. So, sorry, 2 to 3 years. I think, man.
So, if I was Gil, I would find a way to tweak that to make sure that happened this year, because that's can't make yourself up like that. that would be.
Yeah, you want an enticing weekday game to put on national television with a storyline?
Ooh.
That's it.
Thursday night, Huff returns to Huntington. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that would be a little crazy. Okay, we're about 15 minutes in or so, I guess, if we include that in part of the intro. But we do have an important thing to get to, which we haven't really talked about just yet. The Cajuns hosted Marshall for the championship game Saturday night, and they did not win. The first time a road team has won in the Hercules Tire Sun Belt Championship game.
Ooh, that's a nugget. I didn't realize that.
I heard it before, like right after we went off air. What was that, Thursday night when we did the preview with Noah? So I was like, man, I wish I knew that going in, but it does make sense. As soon as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that's true. I don't remember anybody winning, and that is in fact the case until last night. So Marshall does take home the victory, the first ever road win in the championship game, and it wasn't even a contest, right, Marv?
No, I mean, you hate it for Louisiana already losing one quarterback, and then you lose your backup, if you will, who played pretty well in the last couple of games down the stretch, to lose him that early in a game, a championship game nonetheless. But man, hats off to Marshall. They played a heck of a football game from start to finish. You never know how things would have played out if a certain player would have been in or been out. I think it would have been closer for sure. But with all the distractions that Marshall had going on that week or last week, they came out and played pretty good football.
Yeah, that is the way that they played, I guess I should say, is the way I thought both teams would really look. And I think that's what a lot of people expected, as we can see here on screen. The spread was 6 points in favor of Louisiana. That may have changed right before the game, but that was what it was Thursday night going in. The point total was 56.5 points. Obviously, 34 points. They didn't get close to that. But that is because one side didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And like you said, I think that's a massive factor with Fields going out. However, we both agreed that Marshall was winning that game regardless, because they just looked like they were ready, I guess.
Yeah, they were prepared. They came out. They were good from the beginning to the end. I can't remember a spot where I was like, ooh, Louisiana's going to come back. It was just it seemed like they were going to handle business from opening kickoff.
Yeah. I mean, the first points on the board actually were from Louisiana with the Almendarez, I guess, was it 40-yard field goal, which is a chip shot for him. I mean, we know how good his accuracy is. I had him listed as a my X factor, and he was the only offensive factor as far as the Cajuns were concerned on that side of the ball, but just didn't get him in field goal range enough. And honestly, he could have kicked 8 field goals and it still wouldn't have been enough to, really win this game. And then the total yardage, you usually come up with that stuff. You want to tell us what the total yardage is? Because that also wasn't close.
It wasn't close. 415 for Marshall, 256 for the Cajuns. It wasn't like the Cajuns turned the ball over a lot. 2 of 16 on third down. They didn't stay on the field a lot. Marshall won the time of possession, but it wasn't like a completely dominating thing. But yeah, they just the Cajuns just couldn't get it going. Like I said, back up, third string quarterback comes in, a guy that probably halfway through the season wasn't getting a lot of snaps at practice, might have been running scout team, who knows. But now he's your guy, and they struggled to convert, only ran for 57 yards. And compared to Marshall, who super balanced, 193 through the air, 222 on the ground. She said it was just dominant.
Yeah. 25 first downs to 11. There's another one that's not going to do you any favors. Like you said, only 1 turnover for the Cajuns. We did say in the preview show that this could come down to who takes care of the ball better. It probably didn't, right? I mean, 1 turnover wasn't going to change this game with the score the way it was, but technically the team that turned the ball over more did lose this one, which typically happens, but you're usually looking at, 3-4 turnovers before you say something like that. It's only 1 here. So that was not the killer in this game. Like you said, probably quarterback going out early and then just not getting it done on the ground, honestly. And Jambo, is saying Marshall covered the spread 10 times this year. That's great. Yeah. I mean, this is, I believe, I can remember correctly, really, this is the year Marshall thought they would have last year, right? I think preseason-wise, they were expected to do better last year than they were this year. The fans thought they would do better last year. They started off really good last year, which also made that look like a smart pick, and then they kind of tailed off to the end. They finally put it all together, and it was a clear and evident all throughout this game. Shout out to Jordan Houston, okay? A.J. Turner, their number 1 running back throughout most of the year, did not go at all. And I said in the preview, it's possible both running backs are banged up. We'll see if they're anywhere near healthy, they're going to go, right? So Turner did not go. Bill Davis did go for Louisiana, but he was banged up. He carried the ball 4 times for -2 yards. Luckily, Xylon Perry, I guess was their leader in the clubhouse, only 6 carries for 25 yards. So it's not good again. But they did have somebody who was able to take the rock, as well as Washington. Fields ran it a few times before he was knocked out. Chapman, wide receiver from Marshall. I thought Fitzpatrick would be kind of my X factor there. Fitzpatrick, 2 catches for only 7 yards. There was one time where he could have almost been hit in the end zone for a touchdown and just didn't come up with the catch. Wasn't really pass interference, but I think their legs got kind of tangled up. So there was a chance for a big gain and a touchdown to be on the board for him that they just missed out on. But Chapman goes for 86 and a touchdown, clearly the biggest target for the Thundering Herd and a large portion of their offense in this one. So that'll pretty much wrap it up unless you've got any other thoughts on that final game there.
No, I mean, I think we've covered it all. Braylon Braxton had a great game, 18 for 26, 193, 2 touchdowns to the air. Carried the ball 16 times for 66 yards, didn't turn it over. Really felt like he played great football for them. I guess the App game might have been his coming out party, if you will. But he carried him to a championship, and it sounds like he might carry him down to Hattiesburg as well. But great season for Marshall. Like you said, probably this season they thought they were going to have last year, and I really hate it for the Cajuns. I think you have your starting running back and your true starting quarterback in the game, probably completely different, but football's a tough sport, man.
Yeah, that is it's a massive part of what you do. You have to stay as consistent as possible, and unfortunately that didn't quite happen. Okay, so we joked many times last year, and James Madison fans didn't quite joke because they're pretty serious. They were the everything school last year, right? Bowl game, NCAA tournament for men's and women's soccer, NCAA tournament bid for basketball, NCAA tournament bid for baseball. Okay. No argument. You can't really decline that is a factual statement when they do it, right? Well, is Marshall on their way to something similar because they've just won the Sun Belt East, they've won the Sun Belt overall, and their men's soccer team, which this game was supposed to happen yesterday before the football game, got postponed until today, but they did take that victory over SMU down in Dallas 3-2, at one point up 3-1. SMU did make a little bit of a comeback there towards the end. They will face number 1 in the nation, Ohio State, this Friday in Cary, North Carolina. That game starts roughly, and I love when they do this, 7:36. 36. Technically, it probably won't start at 7:36 anyway, because what happens is they play both games on Friday night for soccer before the championship ends up happening on Monday night. Okay. And how they schedule it is the first game starts at 5 p.m. That game goes for as long as needed to get a winner, obviously, because they're going to have the national championship Monday. So there can be no draws, as they say, in soccer. So this game will start almost exactly 30 minutes after the conclusion of that one. So 7:36 is a rough time, but if you are a local Marshall fan to the area of North Carolina, or you're traveling down, definitely be in and around the stadium no later than about 7:30. So you're make sure you are there for kickoff. I'm going to see if I can get credentialed to get over there and maybe do some coverage on that.
Very cool. Who's playing in the other game to go to the national championship?
Vermont and Denver, I believe. Yes. Yeah. Denver is ranked national. Okay. Ohio is the number 1 seed in the tournament. Let me say that. They might technically not have been the number 1 team going into the thing, but typically it's 1-1, right? Typically. Yeah. Denver on the other side of the bracket is the third seed in the tournament. Vermont is unseeded. Marshall was seeded 13th.
Okay.
So, we'll see. The other tough part, unfortunately, for Marshall is everybody gets almost a whole extra day of rest before they do, since they all played yesterday. And obviously Marshall had to play this afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't know. When you've got almost a week's time, it's still not terrible, but could be a small factor at play. I think I've said this on the show in the past. Traveled to Elon to see Marshall play them in the first round last season.
Okay.
And Marshall fans travel great. So I expect them to be loud and rowdy down here in Cary, North Carolina this Friday, and hopefully this Monday as well, because that means they'll be playing yet again for a national championship. For those that don't know, Marshall has already claimed a national championship in soccer once before. So this is not uncharted territory. It'd be interesting whether some of their fans would Sun Belt championship in football or Final Four in soccer. Because I would say national championship always would be above.
Always going to win, yeah.
But if you say, if you had to only choose one, which would it be? I'm thinking they'll still go football. But they are very proud about their soccer up there in Huntington, West Virginia. So we'll have to see if I could maybe put that out to a poll. Okay, we'll get back to the coaching stuff, right? We had 3 coaching – technically we had 1 coaching vacancy, right? We had App State. That was known, obvious coaching vacancy. Then we had a whole bunch of rumors that Huff would leave for Southern Miss, which would make 1 vacancy not be there anymore. I guess we knew we had 2. We had Southern Miss and App State, so we had 2. And then that would create a 3rd, because the coach that would be hired at Southern Miss, as we see on screen now, Coach Huff, would leave Marshall and have them have a vacancy. So we'll go in that order. Coach Huff takes the trophy, the championship, and heads down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I can't wait to see all the contract details, right, Marv?
Yeah. I mean, we alluded to earlier. I'd like to know what went wrong at Marshall. Lots of rumors, and the AD kind of butted heads. His wife wasn't happy there. Could have just been a money play. Are they about to just make him the highest paid coach in the Sun Belt? I don't know. But, very interested to see what the money looks like, what the assistant pool looks like, and I'm sure he's got a big old fat buyout for the first couple of years. Yeah, I think so. Here. I probably should wait till we go through all of them, but I will ruin the trivia and ask it now anyway, because I just think it's an interesting aspect. I didn't know this going in, I guess. Do you know who the youngest coach out of all 3 of the new hires is? Yeah, Huff's like 41 years old, isn't he?
Yes, you nailed it. 41 years old. Tony Gibson, which I guess just like seeing a picture or two, I thought the guy was younger. He's 52.
Okay.
So he will be at Marshall. And Dowell, do you know how to pronounce his last name correctly yet?
Loggains.
It is just Loggains?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Loggains is 44. So Huff's not a lot younger than Loggains, but he's definitely younger there. And obviously, Huff is the only one that comes in with any head coaching experience. So we do have to note that.
Yes.
Southern Miss is getting a great recruiter, as we've known and we've heard. Obviously getting a great coach who was 32-20 before moving over to Southern Miss. So pretty good record because he had some little down times, but obviously we saw what he's capable of. He is only 1-2 in bowl games, but I don't know how much weight I put in bowl games anymore with all these transfers and sitting out for what we're going to do at the next level and all this stuff. So I don't know. Say what you want about that one. Jambo is saying, ultimately, I think Huff and Marshall will struggle next year. So you think Marshall and Southern Miss will both struggle next year? I don't know, though, actually. You pair Huff with Braxton immediately, Southern Miss becomes a much better football team. Now, they were winless in conference, so you do have to mention that.
I think no matter what, that Southern Miss wins more games next year than they did this year. And I think Marshall doesn't win 10 games next year.
I think those are both fair evaluations.
I think one program regresses a little bit. One program takes a step forward. How big of a step is it? Do you go from 1 to 3 wins? Do you go from 1 to 5 wins? And then for Marshall, do you go from 10 to 7? Or is it 10 to 9? Like, I don't know. But I think Huff, it's going to take him a little while. I mean, you don't go 1-11 because you just had a bad coach, right? Like, you don't have talent. So he's going to have to get some talent. With the portal, you can get talent a hell of a lot quicker than you've ever been able to do it. So maybe that shortens that curve that he's got going on there. But I think if you're going to judge it off, he just came off a 10-win season. Yeah, he's not going to win 10 games next year, Southern Miss. But can he get to 4 or 5? I think if they get to 5 wins, that's a hell of a first year.
I would say that is absolutely a factual statement because we saw what ULM just did, right? Were we not saying that's a phenomenal year? Obviously, yes, they wanted to get to 6 wins and get that bowl game, but what was their total under for win total on the season
1.
coming into
1.5.
And they beat that within the first 3 games. So, I mean, I would think that's a decent start. Obviously, no one's going to be happy or thrilled with that. But you do have to be a little bit realistic. The portal can build fast, but again, when you're going from literally the bottom, it's still going to take some work. It's still going to be a work in progress. But we've seen stranger things. What was it? Arizona State? You know where they were picked in the Big 12 before this season started?
Oh, was it dead last?
It was dead last, and you saw what they just did.
They're in the playoffs, man.
Not only conference champions, literally a bye into the playoff.
Crazy.
They had a bye, the best 4 teams in the country. I guess I don't know. I guess there's an argument for best.
They're not one of the best 4 teams in the country, but hey, they're in the playoff. That's all that matters.
True. Hey, once you get there, there's nothing anybody can say to you. You've done what you need to do. Okay, Tony Gibson was then named again. These were all the worst kept secrets in college football throughout most of the week, right? We heard
the next one was probably the best kept secret.
That's true. That's a good point. That is a name. Once I saw it and read it, I was like, "Who the hell is that?" We'll get to him in just a minute. Tony Gibson. This is a name that was actually thrown around for the App State job as well. We did see this one, which made sense too, because he could have stayed in state, being from NC State as it is, where he was the offensive coordinator. Again, like I said, Huff was the only one with any head coaching experience. Tony comes in with a lot of college experience, though. I mean,
he's been in some impressive places as well.
Yes, been at the Division I level since 1999, where he was 2001. They had West Virginia Tech and then West Virginia underneath there. So he was the DB's coach from for 6 years over there at West Virginia. So a good start. Spent time at Michigan, Pittsburgh, Arizona, went back to West Virginia. Most recently was the defensive coordinator as well as the linebacker coach at NC State, where they didn't have the season they were expected to have, but they did have some high hopes coming into the year. So we'll have to see if he can shake Marshall back up to stay in the running for a conference championship for a second straight year now. So,
hey, the last time the Sun Belt hired a coordinator from NC State, it worked out fairly well. Albeit it was for a season. We'll see how this works out.
Yeah, definitely interested to see. I know once we heard his name for the App State job, some people were kind of excited, I think, for him to possibly be the pick.
Yeah.
At least nobody was upset like we've heard with some of the other names, but
yes.
Yeah. Basically, these programs reinvent themselves. Yeah, absolutely. With the transfer and NIL, I think that's true of just about every program in the country, right? I mean, now teams are pulling from FCS to G5, and G5 are going up from where they're at to P5 as best they can. They're not all doing it, but there's some transitioning all the way along that is taking from the teams, and they do have to literally reinvent themselves, especially with these three programs obviously getting new head coaches to basically know a whole new scheme and get to know, I mean, just the town and the area that they're getting into. That's a really big transition that some people don't think about sometimes. Like Huff going from West Virginia to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. You think that's going to be a little bit of a culture shock? I do.
You got to move your, kids, right? You're moving kids from school. It's going to be, like you said, people do it all the time. It is what it is.
Yeah, it certainly is. Okay, so those two worst kept secrets. This one, like you said, Marv, probably the best kept secret. Dow Loggains comes into App State. He's an Arkansas guy. That's where he was born and raised. You have a little bit of a story about this. He went to Abilene High School in Texas.
Yeah, so I get a text message late last night. A guy I work with named Kobe Mavarolas. Kobe lives in Oklahoma, but he's from Texas. Played baseball at Texas A&M, 7th-round draft pick. Played with the Nationals for, I think, 7 or 8 years, as he was so eloquently say. Had a couple cups of coffee in the majors. I looked up the games he got to play. I love you, Kobe, but there's no wonder he got sent down. But he sends me a text and says, hey, man, I grew up with your new head coach. We actually went to the same high school. He was our starting quarterback when I was on varsity. And I texted him back. I was like, man, that's crazy. I was like, hey, I thought you played big-time high school football. They say this guy's 5'6". And he writes me back. He was like, if they say he's 5'6", they're being generous. He said, but in all seriousness, the guy was a baller at quarterback, played against a lot of high-level Division I talent in the conference they played in. And I kind of asked him on a side note, just personally, I was like, hey, what do you think about it? He was like, man, he is a football guy. He was like, you can't underestimate the 15 years he spent in the pros. I know a lot of people say that he was with crappy teams, but you don't keep getting rehired if you're not doing a good job. Says that he thinks that a lot of people don't know him because he's only been in college for 4 years. But he was like, hey, man, he's going to be great for your quarterback room. I think he's a little bit underrated recruiter, and I think you guys got to steal. So
all right,
that's one man's opinion. I think you and I and the other guys were texting that time will tell. On the surface, it seems underwhelming.
Yes.
Just because we don't know who he is, right? But got to get behind him and see what happens. But good God, this name came out of left field. I mean, honestly, you and I and the guys that were texting, there was 3 other names that kept coming up. That we had heard we had offered Neil Brown the job and that he was waiting to see what happened at Western Kentucky. I don't know if you saw that, but Western Kentucky coach did not leave. He was still unemployed, but that $9.5 million buyout makes him feel really good about his life. Yeah. Casey Woods was supposed to be the number 2 guy the entire time. Then Lonnie Galloway gets thrown in the mix, which, holy crap, that got out, and App fans were acting like they were going to just throw themselves off of buildings. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy who no one has a clue who he is. I'm not going to lie. I had to Google search him.
Oh, I definitely did. I was immediately all over the phones trying to figure out what's going on. Is this real, first of all? Because when his name came out, like you said, since no one, and I mean no one, anywhere that I saw, and obviously I've been all over the App State boards trying to figure these things out. And we've been talking to people who have sources. This name never, ever came up. I mean, not even close. Oh, I'm hearing some guy out of South Carolina. Never even, besides Sean Elliott, but that was kind of like the obvious, like too obvious. Like that wasn't gonna, you want to get rid of somebody like Sean Clark and bring in a guy that's just like Sean Clark. I mean, obviously they do have some differences, but you're talking about like a description when you tell somebody else down the road, they're gonna be like, that's kind of the same guy. That was the only name that we had heard at all coming out of the South Carolina program, not his. So yeah, like you said, this guy did not start in college. So you could say that it's better.
I don't even think he played college football.
I do not see. He went to Arkansas for college. It was his alma mater. I don't see a playing history, so that seems to be true.
But he literally gets out of college and gets right into pro football, which is super hard to do, I would think.
Yeah, now he was in as a offensive quality control coach, so he probably got to sleep on the couch and eat crackers for all three meals to make ends meet, because we know how those quality control guys usually get treated as far as the salary is concerned. Now at the NFL level, maybe that's quite a bit better.
Quarterback coach.
Yeah, that's true. Quarterback's coach, and then after just another year, he is the offensive coordinator for the Titans. Then he goes to the Cleveland Browns, spends time with the Chicago Bears, the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, before he ends up back at his alma mater, Arkansas, to be a tight ends coach, obviously just now coming over as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach from South Carolina, where, they just had this guy named Sellers who's been lighting it up all season long.
Wouldn't it be nice to see that guy jump in the portal and just follow offensive coordinator down to App State? Not going to happen, but a man can dream.
Yeah, that would be App State really be having to bring the bag. It may be a conversation, and it's just one that Sellers is like, yeah, unless you're going to pay me better than I get paid here, that's probably not happening. I'm sure South Carolina would step up to match or beat whatever.
They've got dollars that we can't come up with, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just go into their stadium and check it out. Also, an impressive and awesome atmosphere down there in South Carolina. So well done to them. And they didn't end up in the college football playoff, but they did have an argument at least if they want to see how good of a year they had. Now, the one thing that we do have to say, we heard it with Huff. Some fans were okay with him leaving. They wanted him out. Even with the championship, they're like, okay, I mean, we knew he could do it, but we don't love him or whatever you want to say. That's not my experience. I'm not a Marshall fan. I didn't have those thoughts or feelings, but it is what we've heard some of. Obviously, there's people on the other side of that fence completely, and we do have to give them credit for saying, no, we loved him. We wanted to keep him. He's done well, and we wanted to continue to roll there. This guy comes in with a little question marks, right? He hasn't had any job really for longer than about 2 years. Mm-hmm. But like you said, there's something that's redeeming quality because he kept getting jobs regardless. And there is no gap on his resume. He's had a job every single year.
Apparently he followed Adam Gase around, and I don't know what to make of this as an App fan, but I think a lot of folks in the NFL ranks would consider Adam Gase to be probably one of the worst head coaches of all time that continued to get head coaching gigs. So the fact that he drugged this guy with him every time is kind of like, I don't know. Time will tell. We have to be patient.
I'll just say what we've heard, which is one of the reasons people weren't very excited for the hire. Was, again, be very honest about what we've heard and seen people say, which was that there was struggles or disagreements or things that were hard to swallow with some of the play calling. A run up the gut on a 3rd and 7 or something like that. Which really,
App fans. That's
all I'm going to say.
Satterfield did it. Clark did it. Ponce. It's what we do.
Yeah. So that'll be the interesting thing. Do we keep an offensive coordinator who's there and apparently interviewed for, what was it, FIU? Was that where Ponce interviewed apparently?
For the head coach, yeah, he didn't get that spot.
Yeah. So, interesting. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of people that are just trying to figure things out right now. And I've already seen a couple guys from App seem to be excited about this hire that are on the current roster. So that bodes well. That means whatever he said or did in that first meeting with the team went pretty well. I've also heard the other side of that, which is he left South Carolina without saying a word to any of his current players, which
it sucks.
Isn't going to make some people happy, but
not getting those kids in the portal then.
Yeah. But as we know, and this isn't just an App State thing, but just in general, players are really committing to coaches and people they like and people they want to play for and with. They are not necessarily committing to a school. So sometimes when you see these moves, there may be a couple guys from South Carolina who said, I came here because of Dow. And I am going to go where he goes, especially now if he's the head coach. I mean, if he recruited him to a power program and he's going to go down a step to G5, then he's going to, this player is probably going to think, I'm going to be a starter right away. We've seen that's not the case, right? We know that.
Yeah.
But those are some of the thought process sometimes for some of these kids, which makes sense for them. So we'll see if something happens. But Tyler wants to share that we should have went for Neil real hard. I heard they weren't trying to take into account his past Sunbelt success, so he wasn't entertaining it.
So I'll answer that question. Everything that we've heard and know some folks that know is that he was our very first choice. And we offered him the job on Tuesday. And he wanted to wait to see what happened with Western Kentucky. And we gave him a deadline and called his bluff and quickly moved on. Listen, say what you want to say about App State, whether you love us or hate us. I think we're one of the top name brands in G5 football. This should be a job that a lot of people want. Neil's been in the conference. He's been to Boone. He's seen the atmosphere. Like, if you don't want to be a part of that, then if you don't want to be here, we don't want you here kind of deal. But I think that was our number one choice. I think you hear the fans talk like, oh, my God, why would you take Neil Brown? He wasn't that good at West Virginia. It's hard to be successful at West Virginia. I would have taken Neil Brown with open arms at App State because everything that we're going through, I think he really could have helped stabilize the program. But, yeah, we went really hard for him. That was our first choice, and he didn't like us as much as we liked him, apparently.
Yeah, and I'm okay with moving on after hearing those details, right? Because, like, okay, if you're not excited and you're not, like, immediately, where do I sign? I want to be here. I don't have interest in you being here. And that goes not just for App State, for any coaching hire anywhere. If you're immediately like, let me see what else is out there, either for money or other reasons, I don't care.
Let me sleep on it. It's like,
right.
All right. I'll give you this. If you go and apply for a job and you go to the interview, you have to anticipate that I'm going to do well and they're going to offer me this job.
Right.
And if you're not prepared to take it, it's like, why'd you even walk in the door? And I get it in the coaching profession. If the phone rings, you got to answer it, because if you don't, the phone doesn't ring anymore, right? But I don't know. Maybe this works out. Maybe 3 years from now, we're all like, man, you know what? Loggains, who would have thought, best coach we ever had, will probably be gone if that's the case.
Right.
Neil Brown, who? But yeah, very, very strange to hear that we kind of zeroed in, because I was told that Neil Brown's agent reached out to us. Second Clark was fired and was like, hey, we want to talk. And then we fired Clark on a Monday. We offer you the job on a Tuesday. And all of a sudden it's like Thursday afternoon and we're calling you and being like, hey, you're taking it or not? That just seems odd. Maybe those sources and stories aren't 100% true, but I've heard the same story from people that I trust and that would know. I've heard that same story like 3 times.
Yeah, that's true. I have heard the same. Well, some of that because we're in the same chats, but that may be part of the reason. Is Marv watching Sunday Night Football? Because I can see it in the reflection on the window. That's
the wife in there probably watching something on Bravo. I'm just being honest.
Nice. I like that. All right, Jambo's going to give us a rumor here. He said it may be unfounded, but I heard Huff didn't get the job he wanted He was trying to get a job on staff in the SEC, basically to backfill a position after a certain coach left. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be, you say unfounded, and sure, but it wouldn't be unheard of, right? What did we just see in this past offseason? Georgia State's head coach, Sean Elliott, leaves for a position coach in the SEC. Now, part of that was family issues, right? He didn't want to have to move his family and keep traveling back and forth. It was easier to stay in Columbia, where his wife and kids stayed, even though he was in Atlanta. So, yeah, I mean, they can pay more, even more than
equivalent money, if not better.
Yeah, well, here, and he says it right there. I just missed that in the next line. Paid much more than a Sun Belt head coach. Yeah. It sucks, but that is the game we are playing.
I think it's where Loggains was making like 1.5 at South Carolina to be offensive coordinator. He's not going to make 1.5 in Boone next year.
I'd be shocked. And also, I don't want that, because part of me is like, I want the guy who will take less, knowing he trusts himself, he believes in himself, that he can get the job done, and he will get to that point once again somewhere else, right?
Yeah, you take a pay cut, you're going to make probably half the money. But let's face it, if you're making $750 a year, like, poor fellow, you're doing pretty darn good, right? But yeah, you roll the dice for 3 years and say, hey, my next contract is going to be $3.5 million a year or whatever it is. And yeah, sometimes you got to bet on yourself and say, I can do it.
Yeah, that's just a real quick statement because of stuff like that. That's why I never really get all that offended when some of these guys are making their money. Like, again, quality control analyst or whatever offensive analyst behind the scenes, especially at the college level, they get paid nothing. So when these guys work their way up, those 1 point whatever $1 million contracts, like, you got to remember back in the other days, he was making like not even 30 grand a year, whatever, sleeping on couches of other coaches and just eating at the facility with the players, because that's all he could literally afford. So yeah, I'm not too harsh on the big contracts for coaches. Now, when you're talking like $33 million or something, obviously we're talking different money, but I'm talking like 1.5 when you take taxes into consideration and everything else. I don't really have a hard time saying that some of these guys deserve that, because they've worked harder behind the scenes that you don't think about in that moment. Now, that's not App State's not paying for when he was a analyst. I'm not saying that, but indirectly he's kind of making up for some lost time, in his savings account or whatnot. So
and I also hate it when a coach that you thought was going to be with you forever gets an amazing opportunity and goes and creates generational wealth for his family. Like,
yes,
you put in the time, go get your money. Everybody will be okay.
Correct.
So yes, once again, if Loggains ends up being a phenomenal coach, and 3 years from now, we're looking for another head coach because Arkansas comes and says, hey, man, we're going to give you $4 million a year on a 5-year contract. Like, good for him. That's phenomenal.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, at that point, there's no talking about it. Ben says, off topic of football, but Arkansas State Red Wolves beat number 16 Memphis. This is basketball, for those wondering, with it being the highest ranked win in program history. Excuse me. That is phenomenal stuff. I was asked if I was watching that game earlier, and I won't even lie to you. Totally forgot about it because of Marshall being in the soccer. Well, they weren't in at that point, but they were playing for a spot in the College Cup. So I was focused on that, since it will happen right down the road, and knowing whether they were in or out would be dependent on me trying to get over there and see something. But that is one I'm going to go back and watch for sure. So congrats to the Red Wolves as they finally get the biggest win of the season without any question or doubt in basketball. We will have a basketball show Monday. We were trying to do one last week. It felt rushed. It felt like I was ill-prepared with how much we had done for football last week, plus a Thursday show. So we would have had to do it on a Friday. Anyways, we are going to go live tomorrow night, Monday night, for basketball coverage to catch you up on everything that has happened. Obviously, that one will be the biggest topic at hand for sure. Jambo saying Neil Brown has to forfeit a percentage of his buyout. Basically, he'd give your salary to West Virginia and coach 70 to 80 hours for free. Yeah,
I think it's offsetting. I think that was the case that we were once again, all unfounded, that we were going to try to pay him. So I think he's owed $3.2 million a year. Whatever salary he gets offsets what West Virginia owes him. So the thought was that we could pay him $500,000, right? So West Virginia still got to pay him the 2.7. We pay him $500,000. That frees up an additional $300,000-$400,000 for an assistant pool. So yeah, but listen, Neil Brown's not mad at the guy, right? Like, he could not go to work all next year and still make $3.3 million. So good for him.
Yep. I feel so bad for him. Oh, man. Jambo says, a thought. We applauded athletic departments for treating sports like a business. Yeah.
Dude.
And they are. They are.
This is a business.
It is. It absolutely is a business. It's only become more of a business since NIL and paying these athletes has become a thing. The transfer portal is, as we said, free agency. It's the minor leagues for the NFL. That's what it has unofficially become.
I literally saw a article today. I can't remember the guy's name. It's a quarterback for Kansas. It says, so-and-so inks a new deal to stay with Kansas for next year. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Yeah. He signed a new updated NIL contract to stay with the team for a year. It's like, wow, that's where we are.
This is a great point. So he follows that point up by saying, but when a coach or a player treats it like a business, we get mad. That's right. That's right. A lot of fans out there do get upset about these things. We've had this conversation with TJ, who is the former player, for those that are newer or not to the show. And he says, like, he didn't even know App State existed before he was recruited there. Didn't even know. So you want to say that they're committed to this school? No, these schools have to reach out to certain people and give them a shot and opportunity. And sometimes that's solely because they put out flyers to 75 kids and they know damn well they only have 25 spots to fill. But they know not all those kids are going to commit. So they have to over pursue in order to get some of these kids in. You want these kids to stay there and act like you that they owe you something for that. I mean, hopefully that they start to feel that way pretty soon after they get there. And I think obviously TJ kind of felt that way, right? I mean, pretty much a winning program from the day he stepped out there till he left. But, that's not always the case. So
no,
I don't know.
There's a lot of these kids nowadays that are taking the opportunity to benefit their families. Like you've got kids out there that, from a freshman or a sophomore are able to make several $100,000 that have grown up with nothing, and there's no promise they ever make it to the next level, right? So like cash the check while you can get it. Now, most of them are probably being very stupid with their money and blowing it, which I would have done the exact same thing. You would have given me $200,000 a year, 20 years old. Woo-hoo. Yeah.
Going.
Yeah. Cars and bars, baby. Let's go. So as much as I hate it, we were on the group chat the other day. Like, I think for programs like ours and programs at this level where you get the kid that might have been overlooked by the power programs, you get them in, you develop the player. That's how you create culture within your program. Like, that is dying, and that is sad to see. That's the part that I get upset about. But when a kid leaves because someone else is going to go pay him a shit ton of money and we can't do it, do you hate it? Yes. Are you mad at him? Man, I love my job. If somebody comes and offers me more money to do the same thing, I'm going to, right? So I get it.
Yeah. Hey, can someone come do that for me too, by the way? Because I'm ready. I'm ready to sign a new NIL deal somewhere else.
Hey, the syndicate needs to sign a new NIL deal.
Yeah. I'll pass it along to some of these kids, I promise, but I got to get enough for me. So we'll have to see. Jambo's got another comment. One thing bad about transferring, you don't really have a home to come back to later in life as far as being an alumnus. Yeah, and I think we've seen that. I think there's guys who have no interest in coming back. They don't care. They're not going to treat it like that. So I've seen and I've heard, across the board, people that had gone to App State who live, I don't know, at the other side of the state, and they live close to NC State. They donate to NC State. They go to NC State sporting events, and they don't do anything for App State, but they only graduate from App. It's what happens, right? I mean, it is a long trip, as Marv and I do almost every home football game Saturday. It's 3 hours at least each way, so it's not cheap or easy. And sometimes it just makes more sense for them to stay local, and they feel like they owe nothing. They paid their time, they paid for their education. They don't owe anything extra, and that's okay. Technically, they are right. They don't owe anything if they don't want to. So, yeah. It's also hard with the teacher's school, right?
It is. Yeah, that's what it started off as. We've had this discussion before, though. Like, should kids be able to get paid? Yeah, because the schools are making a boatload of money off of these kids.
Yeah.
But, man, they screwed it up with it being unlimited. I think that there should be a cap. And when I say cap, before anyone says anything, like a very generous cap. Like, the top dollar guys should be getting top dollar. But with the portal thing, I think you should be able to transfer once. That's it. What
I say once on its own, but as soon as they have a coach leave, I do agree that they should be able to, like, if they have 2 coaches in 2 years that leave their programs, they should essentially be 3 transfers. You know what I mean? Like I
will agree with that. That you should get a one-time money transfer, and then everything else has to be like a coaching change, family situation, something relevant, not just these guys are going to pay me an extra $75,000 this year, so I'm going to go over there. I mean, you literally have guys on their 3rd and 4th programs, which is just ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah. And honestly, save, a handful of guys. That's usually not a good situation. Like you're leaving because something didn't work out. Something went wrong somewhere along the way. So
Dylan Gabriel might tell you a little bit differently, as he's the quarterback of the number 1 team in the country. But
he's one of those ones I said in the handful.
yeah. We're no secret. So we've got guys on our roster that were their 3rd stop. So it just, once again, that's the part that, and maybe I'm old school, but it's hard to have a player-led program and have culture when you don't have guys that have always been there for a long time. You just rotate them in and out.
Yeah. Jambo wants to ask us if we know about exit interviews and forcing players to the portal. I don't know the ins and outs of all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. The best situation that I've been made aware of is, Dion takes the camera in when he tells all the kids at Colorado, like, hey, some of y'all just go ahead and hit that portal, right? Like, and I'm sure it's a little bit more face-to-face in some circumstances where they're just like, hey, I don't really have a spot for you, which is terrible. I don't think that should really be allowed either, but maybe some truth should be told to some of these kids sometimes, because, it would benefit them to know that coach really has no plan for you in place. Yeah. So is it the way they say it or the fact that it's said in general?
I think that's easier for a new coach, right? Like, you can come in and be like, hey, Dom, listen, man, I watched your film. I don't think you fit in with our new scheme.
Yeah. And that's what he's saying. Yeah. That was literally the Dion thing, right? Basically, every year players aren't up to task, have a meeting with them and say, thanks for your contribution. Our plans going forward don't include you. Yeah. It's tough to hear. But I say that's fair now, because if these guys are getting, now for the ones that aren't getting paid, obviously that's terrible, because those kids are just trying to go out there and work hard and earn their playing time. And hopefully, if they have a scholarship that's kind of considered at wherever their next stop hopefully would be, but we know that's also probably not the case. However, I don't feel bad for the ones that are getting paid and then say, hey, you're cut. I mean, that's the life in the NFL. If they're ever going to go do that, hey, work hard, find a new spot. Just like Marv and I, if we got let go tomorrow, hey, tough luck. Nobody owes you anything. This is life now. You are an employee. Maybe not technically in the football sense, but you are an employee if you are getting paid. And if you don't do your job, go find another one. I mean, you can't have it both ways. We can't baby these kids and then say, hey, we're going to give you all this money to come in here and do a job.
Or they say, hey, you can stay here for next year, but your money gets cut in half. And if you think you can do better somewhere else, feel free to explore it.
Yeah.
Which is great. 5 years ago, these conversations were happening.
Oh yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I know Marv had kind of a hard stop right at 9:30. We're a little past that, but I do want to mention real quick before we leave here, we had 8 teams qualify for bowl games. We have 8 teams officially in bowl games. We will go over some of those, probably not all of them, this week on the Wednesday show to preview at least the one coming up this weekend that is between South Alabama and Western Michigan. And then technically before the next Wednesday show, JMU would have faced Western Kentucky. So we'll probably preview those 2, but we may put together a bigger show than just 2 game previews. Who knows? We'll see. But thank you to
really good bowls.
What was that?
Some of our teams got really good bowls as well.
Yeah, they really did. There's some exciting matchups. I'm excited for the Marshall and Army game. Coastal versus UTSA could be a good one. And I mean, Georgia Southern, Sam Houston could be a really good game. And then
Louisiana got TCU.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be that's really cool. Like it's fun to see some of our conference brethren get some better bowl matchups, some ones that weren't in our pool, if you will, and get some big names. That's really cool to see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Jambo, this is the first time I remember seeing you comment on the show, and we really appreciate all the interaction. Great comments, great questions. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we will continue to provide coverage of the Sun Belt. Like I said, maybe there'll be some soccer coverage really for the first time this year after this weekend, but we shall see. Definitely some basketball tomorrow and baseball in the future with Marv and Seth. So thank you for everyone joining the show tonight, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.